Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you. Welcome back, wildlings. Tonight's tale of frightening found footage, Crawl.mov. I go to a small community college in Arizona. Been working on my digital imagery and video production certificate for about 2 semesters now. The college allows me to go in and put in some extra hours of work on my videos before releasing them and displaying them at the small art gallery across from the art department, not to mention that I also work there after classes as well. Our campus is out on the highway, about 10 miles from town, very isolated, and it is gloomy on most days. The college is surrounded by desert and tall mountains. The Planning Commission decided to move the art building closer to the other classrooms since we're in a solitary building that takes a while to walk to. So they gutted the small building and left the digital photography and video production classrooms for last. One night, after my work shift, I decided to work on one of my videos, since it was due the following week. We used some expensive new generation Mac computers, but I had always noticed this smaller, beat-up Mac that hid in the back of one of the closets. Since my supervisor had gone home that night, I decided to hook the little sucker up, see if there was anything interesting on it. I plugged it in, and it took a little while to boot up. Older soft, I guess. Finally, I was greeted by the welcome screen. There were 2 accounts, one that read instructor and the other reading student. I logged into the student account and skimmed through the various student pictures as I noticed they all had the same man in the background. A balding, middle-aged male. His eyes were blue as pictures of a nebula. His grin in every single picture was wide, and his eyes seemed to gaze straight into my soul. At the end of a long, long list of snaps, I found a movie file. It was titled Crawl.mov. This would have been around 8 o'clock at night. I started to get uncomfortable, and the name of that file, for some reason, made my heart beat faster. I wanted to watch, but I knew I was going to regret it. I called my friend to come pick me up, since I was 10 miles away from town and the buses never run so late. I had about 15 minutes before she actually arrived to take me home. I clicked on the file and it popped up in QuickTime. My hands were clammy and my eyes darted across the small window. It faded in slowly with a sort of sad, sorrowful song playing over it. Then appeared the title, Crawl, in bold red text. It faded out and quickly cut to a shot in a desert at night. All I could hear were footsteps on gravel and bushes and weeds being swatted out of someone's way. I began to feel relieved and assured myself this was only a student edit. I laughed as I remembered myself being scared to even open the file. I took out my phone and looked down at it, checking for any new notifications as the video played. When I looked back up, I stopped as my jaw dropped open. What I saw was gruesome, horrifying. A man covered in blood, the exact same man in the pictures I'd seen just a couple of minutes ago. The shot was just of his face at the beginning of the film, but soon it panned down and revealed him sawing through what looked to be someone's bone. His smile was still painted across his face. The camera zoomed out, and there she was, a petite brunette, her eyes wide with fear as the man kept sawing through her leg. I cupped my hand over my mouth, trying to convince myself that the video was just edited. It was all just special effects, but it looked so real. The footage was raw. It didn't show any signs of being played with at all. All there was through the whole video was silence. The look on the girl's face. I still can't forget the look on her face to this day. About 5 minutes passed by and it finally cut to black. I leaned back into my chair thinking to myself, what the fuck did I just watch? All of a sudden, I started hearing noises coming from the computer and the screen. It was still black, but I remembered that I hadn't lowered the volume. Slowly but surely, I started making out little whimpers. It was the girl. It had to be. I hovered over the time bar. The video was still going. It still had about 5 minutes left. The whimpers grew louder and louder. The black seemed to be growing lighter into gray until finally a dirt road came into focus. The girl had been thrown in the middle of the road, shivering and twitching, still alive, but both of her legs were missing. There was chanting in the background behind the camera. It got louder and louder. Satan is my father, and hell is my home. Over and over again. It was a man's voice. I gritted my teeth as I was growing more nervous by the second. Then the chanting stopped and he began to whistle like he was trying to get the girl's attention, like a person would with a dog. And then he said, "Come here, girl. Crawl. You can do it. Crawl." The girl looked straight into the camera. Her eyes were bloodshot and distorted. They didn't look human to me. She turned herself onto her stomach and lifted her hands above her head, starting to pull her body toward the camera. This sinister grin started to grow on her lips. The skin on her face was pale, bruised, cut up. All you could hear was her body and the dirt below slowly making her way closer and closer. She finally reached the man's feet. She had left a trail of blood behind her. She looked up and shrieked. I've never in my life heard such a blood-curdling sound, like a pig squealing and a baby crying mashed up together. I quickly unplugged the computer and threw it back in place, closed up the room, and almost sprinted outside. I pushed the door to the building open. My friend rolled up in the parking lot, and I got in as fast as I could. Hardly spoke on the way home, until I thanked her for the ride. The next morning, I told my supervisor about the video and what I'd seen. He laughed, and these were his exact words. "Who finally told you the ghost story?" I told him I could show him where it was. I pulled the computer out of the closet and plugged it in. We tried the power button, but nothing happened. He proceeded to tell me that that computer had been broken, and it had just been sitting there for a couple of years now. He said that the ghost story around this college was about a girl from the dorms who'd been kidnapped and dragged out into the desert. Her legs were cut off, and she was offered as a sacrifice to Satan by one of the staff members from the ceramics department. He assured me that it was just a tale to keep students from the dorms from going out into the desert at night alone. Then my supervisor added, "Some people say they hear someone whistling in the desert at night, calling for someone to crawl. Something like, 'Come here, girl, crawl. You can do it. Crawl.' But I think that's just a load of bullshit." It's disturbing how often these supposed institutions of higher learning are the source not for knowledge or wisdom, but myths and horror. Too bad that. Stay scary, my wildlings. and make the most of your nights.